always wanted people to laugh. I wanted to make them laugh. And I thought that was a good thing. I thought it was a good trait. I, at one time, even wanted to be a comedian and get paid for it. And anyway, that's how I was wired. And I came to realize that no prophet ever made anything funny. He was always on the serious side of things. And God did give us the ability to laugh and be joyful and have mirth. The Old English word is mirth. This video is going to be based on Proverbs 14, verse 13, where he says, even in laughter, the heart is sorrowful. And the end of that mirth, the end of that laughter that you're still sorry in, is heaviness, emptiness, an end of all of it, of this world. Now keep in mind, we're talking about the laughter and the joy of things of this world. And I'm going to counter that with Isaiah later on at the end, as I conclude. Anyway, so let's first see what it says about laughter and mirth, and how they are superseded by really what is called emptiness or vanity. So we'll go to Ecclesiastes 2 verses, the first two verses. I said in mine heart, go to now, I will prove thee with mirth. Therefore enjoy pleasure. And behold, this also is vanity, emptiness. So enjoying pleasure he found to be really nothing. I said of laughter, it is mad, and mirth, what to do with it? What does it do? What does it do for you? Those are two verses. And then he again in chapter 7, verse 4, he says, the heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, being sorrowful, being crying and mourning. But the heart of fools is in the house of mirth. See? So that he sees a big difference, and it's better. He's saying it's better, it's to be wiser, to be mourning and being sorry, and because when you're mourning, you're really thinking of reality, and the reality of this world is the end of this, is the end, which is death, of losing your loved ones. It's written into your DNA that you're going to die. In the flesh, you're going to die. That's why we need Jesus. And that's a whole different topic. But all topics come to that you need Jesus. But all topics are not funny, and all jokes, as it says, even in the laughing part of the joke, there's sorrow. There's a reality, that reality that there's more to this whole thing than laughing about it. The same book, Ecclesiastes, chapter 8, 15. Then I commended mirth, because a man has no better thing under the sun than to eat, drink, and be merry. For that shall abide with him all the days of his life, which God gives him under the sun. So he has a value in mirth, and being joyful and eating and drinking and being merry. He's got a little bit of a value because that's really, he's working every day except for the seventh. In the sweat of his brow, he's bringing forth his bread. But what does he get for it? He gets to eat the bread. He gets to drink his wine, and he gets to be with his wife and children and be merry. That's what he's got, and that's the best thing for him, and he praises it for that. And there's another piece of that, which is this: because tomorrow we die. See, Solomon never knew that there's an afterlife, and there's rewards for being good, and there's a reward for listening to God and being. Solomon never knew that. He never knew about everlasting life. That's the reason why he said all is vanity. If he knew about everlasting life, he wouldn't have said that. And it's never in the New Testament that all is vanity. That is not there. All is vanity without Jesus, yes. That's there. Okay, let's keep going. And the next piece of this is that joy and laughter of this world ends, and it ends in the heaviness. And that's that's the title of this video. Isaiah 24, verse 8, and then verse 11, also verse 11. The mirth of tabrets ceases. The noise of them that rejoice ends. The joy of the harp ceases. There is crying for wine in the streets. All joy is darkened. The mirth of the land is gone. See, so there's an end. There's a bitter end. Now, it has to be a bitter end. There's no joy left. And then it's heaviness. It's hard to see that. And there are many verses that point it out, especially Revelation, and I'll read that last. Jeremiah, verse 34, chapter 7, 34, chapter 16, verse 9, and chapter 25, verse 10 seem to repeat. So I'll read them all, and you see if there's much of a difference. There's not much, but there is a little bit of a difference. It's amplified. This whole thought is amplified in Jeremiah, who points to the same things Revelation says. Chapter 7, 34 first. Then will I cause to cease from the cities of Judah and from the streets of Jerusalem the voice of mirth, the voice of gladness, the voice of the bridegroom, and the voice of the bride. For the land shall be desolate. It's heaviness there, it stops. Chapter 16, verse 9, For thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, Behold, I will cause to cease out of this place in your eyes and in your days the voice of mirth, the voice of gladness, the voice of bridegroom, the voice of the bride. And now let's go to 25, verse 10. Moreover, I will take from them the voice of mirth, and the voice of gladness, and the voice of the bridegroom, and the voice of the bride, the sound of millstones, and the light of the candle. So you see, Hosea 2, he chimes in as well, verse 11, I will also cause all her mirth to cease, her feast days, her new moons, her Sabbaths, and her solemn feasts. Talking about Israel now. Hosea is also about both the correction and the salvation of Israel, the kingdom of the 10 tribes. That's Hosea is all about that. And you can see one of the first things he does is cause all the mirth to cease, feast days, new moons, Sabbaths, and solemn feasts. Solemn. See, the solemn feasts stopped too. He was just taking everything away from them. And they lost their identity, and that's called the lost tribes. They lost their identity. That's another topic. But now let's go to Revelation. That sort of like concludes the matter. And the Revelation is the last book, and it's a good place to conclude it, right? Okay, let's go to chapter 18, and everything is going to be between 15 and 24, verses 15 through 24. The merchants of these things, which were made rich by her, shall stand afar off for the fear of her torment, and their weeping and wailing, and saying, Alas, alas, that great city that was clothed in fine linen, purple, scarlet, decked with gold, precious stones, and pearls. Mystery woman Babylon, the mother of harlots. She was a city. She was deeply a wicked, fallen angel. It wasn't a particular city. She wasn't a particular person. Ahab's wife Jezebel mimics her very much. Any harlot or any woman that dresses and acts to tempt men, they're all part of this. They don't even realize who they're taking after. The best thing to do is to take after Sarah, Abraham's wife, whose daughters you are if you are not afraid with any amazement. Because that being afraid part, to be loyal to a man that's overpowering can probably not be easy for a woman. So I think that's what that not be afraid with any amazement part is. But it's definitely role model for a woman. In my view, there are only two role models. You could be the daughter of the mother of harlots, or you can be the daughter of Sarah, who is the blessed one, the one that God preferred women to be. For in 1 hour so great riches is come to naught, and every shipmaster and all company in ships and sailors, and as many as trade by the sea, stood afar off. So this is specifically talking about an end of trade from continent to continent, or that continents that are separated by the oceans and the sea and the rivers and those kind of things that divide the countries and it's going to be 10 regions. The earth is going to be divided into 10 regions, and that's another topic. But there's not going to be trade between those regions, and that this is what they're crying about. And they're saying it's going to happen in 1 hour. And they cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, What city is like unto this great city? And they cast dust on their heads and cried and wept and wailed, saying, Alas, alas, that great city wherein were made rich all that had ships in the sea by reason of her costliness. For in 1 hour she is made desolate. And then we're told to be happy about. We're told Christians, people of God, are told to rejoice over her. Rejoice over her, thou heaven, and ye holy apostles and prophets, for God has avenged you on her. And a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone and cast it into the sea, saying, Thus with violence shall that great city Babylon be thrown down, and shall be found no more at all. And the voice of harpers and musicians and pipers and trumpeters shall be heard no more at all in thee. And no craft craftsman of whatsoever craft he shall be found no more at all in thee. And the sound of the millstone shall be heard no more at all in thee. And the light of the candle shall shine no more at all in thee. And the voice of the bridegroom and the voice of the bride shall be heard no more at all in thee. For thy merchants were the great men of the earth, and for by thy sorceries were all nations deceived. See? So she had the nations deceived. They were doing things for her, to increase her, and they didn't even realize it. What sorcery has to do with being drugged up. 24. And in her were found the blood of the prophets and of the saints and of all that was slain upon the earth. So all of the wars that she influences to be caused, she puts desires of the lust of money into the rulers of this world. She puts in them a desire to have wars to make money. And that kills people. The blood in her was found the blood of the prophets, because she doesn't like Christians, just like her so-called husband, the Antichrist. He doesn't like them either. And the new ruler, the Pope, it's going to be the Pope. He don't like them either. Nobody likes the Christians. Nobody likes faithful people in God like the 144,000 of the tribes of Israel that are going to be saved. So therefore, you can see that joy and laughter of this world end, but make way for something much greater. Now this is where Isaiah chimes in. Isaiah 64, verse 4, and this is quoted by Paul in 1 Corinthians 2, verse 9. For since the beginning of the world, men have not heard, nor perceived by ear, neither have they seen, O God, besides thee, what he has prepared for him that waits for him. So you see, we have a joy and on this earth, and we have laughter, we have good things, we have things that we like and we are happy with. And that's the mirth and the joy of this world, of things of this world. But eye has not seen nor ear heard what is in store for us in the next world, in the everlasting world, forever and forever. Very, very important. What it's going to be so nice. So, whatever it is, it's worth cutting your hand for, cutting off your hand. If your hand causes you to sin, cut it off, because it's better to go to heaven without it than to live here with it in the sin and therefore be prevented from going into heaven. Because you can't keep sinning the same sin over and over. You could sin and ask forgiveness and get that forgiveness, but it's got to stop. It has to have an end, because you can't be a sinner walking in sin in this world and be right standing with God. You just can't. When you do sin, that's the old man that did it, because the new man can't sin. The new man is in the image of God. He's born of God. He's just like Jesus, and Jesus couldn't sin if he wanted to. He didn't want to, but he couldn't sin. Actually, at one time, he wanted to go against what his father wanted, but he didn't. He said, not my will, but your will be done. And that's what we have to do. Same thing. So, we're born again in the image of God. And the image of God doesn't sin. And that's where the difference is. Doesn't sin at all. But the old man that is nailed to the cross with him. You see, there were two thieves that died with him. One believed him and the other one didn't believe him. And the one that believed him was told he was going to be with him that day in paradise. So that whole thing about the other two thieves dying with him one's the old man that dies with him and lives with him, and the other one is the unbelieving man. Is the old man that doesn't believe him and keeps in the sin, stays in the sin, and he doesn't go with him. All right, so that's a very important thing. So let's look at a couple of things that I noticed, things that are noteworthy, that the prophets had character. And I think one of the most, if you could say, odd way about Jonah, or a little bit of comical ways of him, but is expressed in Jonah chapter 4. Now you know the story. Jonah was told to go to Nineveh and tell them and warn them, otherwise he was going to destroy them. And he didn't want to do it, and he went away from the Lord, and to make a long story short, he had to be thrown into the water, and he was in that belly of that whale 3 days and 3 nights. All right? And then he was spit up on the ground, and then he obeyed, and he went to Nineveh, and they repented. And here it is, chapter 4, that Jonah is distressed. He's displeased. But it displeased Jonah exceedingly, and he was very angry. He was angry that God did not do what he said he was. He said he was going to kill them, do away with them, and he didn't. And he was angry at that. And he prayed unto the Lord. And when you say he prayed unto the Lord, it means he talked to the Lord and said, I pray thee, O Lord, was not this my saying? And so in other words, before he even went on this mission, he didn't want to go. When he says, when I was yet in my country, therefore I fled unto Tarshish, for I knew that thou art a gracious God and merciful, slow to anger, and of great kindness, and you repent of evil. So he was saying, I knew you weren't going to do it. And I'm thinking that a part of his reasoning that he didn't want to tell them is because they were going to repent, and God was going to forgive them. And what happens if you prophesy and it doesn't come to pass? That means that they take up the stones and they stone you. And he probably this is my doesn't say this anywhere, but I think he didn't want to be considered a false prophet. And that's the reason why he didn't want to do it at all. And he did it. And it happened. And now he's sitting there saying, I wonder, are they going to think I'm a false prophet? He's definitely not a false prophet. And Jesus honored Jonah more than any other prophet. He's never, I'll point that out. Verse 3, therefore now, O Lord, take, I pray thee, I beseech thee, my life from me. For it is better for me to die than to live. Then said the Lord, doest thou well to be angry? So the Lord is trying to correct him and let him know you shouldn't be angry. It's not a good thing to be angry. In Ephesians 4, verse 26, he says, "Be ye angry and sin not. Let not the sun go down upon your wrath." See, so it's being angry happens, but don't allow it to take control and make you do something. And don't get rid of it before the sun goes down. Give it a little bit of time, but get rid of it. Is the wisdom for getting angry. It's not a good thing. Verse 5. So Jonah went out of the city and sat on the east side of the city, and there made him a booth and sat under it in the shadow till he might see what would become of the city. So he's sitting under the shadow so that he doesn't get sunburned. Verse 6, and the Lord God prepared a gourd, and made it to come up over Jonah, that it might be a shadow over his head, to deliver him from his grief. So Jonah was exceedingly glad of the gourd. So God makes him happy, giving him shade. And it makes him happy. And verse 7, now God is playing a little trick here on him. Verse 7, but God prepared a worm when the morning rose the next day, and smote the gourd that it withered. So he gives him shade, he takes the shade away. Verse 8, and it came to pass when the sun did arise, that God prepared a vehement east wind, and the sun beat upon the head of Jonah. So the east wind, blows all the withered leaves off the roof of the booth that he was there, and the sun arises and it beats upon the head of Jonah, that he faints and wished himself to die, and said, "It is better for me to die than to live." Verse 9, and God said to Jonah, "Doest thou well to be angry for the gourd?" And he said, "I do well to be angry even to death." So he wants to die again. Verse 10, and then said the Lord, "Hast thou had pity on the gourd?" Now, why does he say that? You have pity on the gourd. Now, so Jonah doesn't want to hurt the gourd that came and went. He has pity. That's what he's saying. The gourd came and went, and I forgive that gourd. I just kill me. So he says, "Thou hast had pity on the gourd, for which thou hast not labored, neither made it grow, which came up in the night and perished in the night. Should I not spare Nineveh, that great city, wherein are more than 60, that's 120,000 persons that cannot discern between their right hand and their left hand, and also much cattle?" So this is where, the character of Jonah was so crazy. I mean, he was in the belly of the whale 3 days and 3 nights, and he lives. He doesn't drown, he doesn't die, he lives through that whole thing, and gets up his strength and prophesies to the king and to the people. You gotta repent, and they do, and everything is good, and he wants to die. After all of that, he wants to die. So you could see in this that whole path that Jonah took was in the will of God. God wanted him to go to Tarshish and get on a boat and go away from Nineveh as far as he could. And God caused the storm, and he caused the torment and the boat, and they had to get rid of him and had to throw him overboard. All of that, and the big fish, and spitting them up, and all of that was the will of God to show. Jonah chapter 1 verse 17. Let's first go to Luke 11:32 in the Luke 11:32. The men of Nineveh shall rise up in judgment with this generation and condemn it, for they repented at the preaching of Jonah, and behold, a greater than Jonah is here. So you see, he's calling Jonah great because they listened to him, and he brought a message, and they repented, and the people that repented are going to be examples that those that are rejecting Jesus, they're going to look bad because of that. And in verse 29, he says, and when the people were gathered thick together, he began to say, this is an evil generation. They seek a sign, and there shall no sign be given it but the sign of Jonah the prophet. So, what is the sign of Jonah the prophet? Jonah chapter 1 verse 17. Now the Lord had prepared a great fish to swallow up Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. So that is a very powerful message. That's a very powerful prophecy that Jonah really didn't say. He lived it out. And God is the one who made all of that, and God is the one who did it. God is really the one who gave the sign. That sign, because that sign is a very important sign. Okay, let's go over to Matthew 17, verses 24 through 27. Jesus and Peter. And when they were come to Capernaum, they that received tribute money came to Peter and said, does your master pay tribute? And when he was come into the house, Jesus prevented him, saying, what thinkest thou, Simon? Of whom do the kings of the earth take custom? Of their own children or of strangers? And Peter said to him, of strangers. Jesus said unto him, then are the children free. Notwithstanding, lest we should offend them, go thou to the sea and cast a hook, and take up the fish that first comes up. And when thou hast opened his mouth, thou shalt find a piece of money. That take and give to them for me and thee. So that whole thing is sort of funny, and a joke can be made out of it. Talking about a debt collector that thinks he knows. He's heard all the excuses of everybody that why they can't pay or how they're going to pay. I'll pay you tomorrow. I'll pay you on Tuesday. Those are all the debt collectors. Get all of these. I'll pay you. Try to avoid it. And when this guy when this debt collector comes back to his boss, he's going to say, well, don't worry, he's going to get the money. How's he going to get the money? He's going to go get a fish, and the fish is going to catch. The fish that he catches is going to have money in it. And his boss says, are you kidding? Are you crazy? And I could see a joke coming out of that, is what I'm saying. So that's just saying that, some of these things that happen, these miracles that Jesus does, not only tell you things like, look, whose land is this? It tells you that, and it also gives you the insight that Jesus could do anything. And God prepared that fish with a coin just for that. For paying that. And I don't know when he did. I don't know when the fish caught swallowed the coin. I don't know. The other thing that I have to point out, and I'll conclude with this, is that they called Jesus a wine bibber because he wanted to preach the gospel to them. He wanted to reach them with the gospel. So he became like them. And Paul also exhibits the same quality in 1 Corinthians 9. Let's go to 1 Corinthians 9, verses 19 through 23. For though I be free from all men, yet have I made myself servant unto all, that I might gain the more. See, he's looking for a gain in the kingdom. He's gaining. He wants reward. He wants to do good things, and he wants the rewards for it. He's a servant. He wants to be the servant because the servants are great in the kingdom of heaven. 20. And unto the Jews I became as a Jew, that I might gain the Jews to Jesus. To them that are under the law, as under the law, that I might gain them that are under the law. So he showed himself as a Jew that is under the law, even though he was freed from that law. To them that are without the law, as without the law. So he also went to those Gentiles that didn't have the law. He became just like them. I don't have the law either. He was both of them. And now he has in italics here, he's not without law to God, but under the law to Christ. The law to Christ has a freedom to it that he's exercising that freedom of the law. Because when I say the freedom of the law, when they say that, they're talking about, when they say they're free from they're talking about, there are two laws. You have to love the Lord thy God with all your heart, strength, soul, and mind, and love thy neighbor as thyself. If you obey those two great laws, all the rest of the law is fulfilled in those two laws. And that's the freedom of the law. To love God, to love your neighbor, to do what he's doing now. He's loving his neighbor in the sharing of the gospel, and it's salvation to him, and it's a little tiny bit of a reward for him, for Paul himself. But it's salvation to the other guy. So continuing on here, to the weak became I as weak, that I might gain the weak. He's talking about weak that, anything is a sin. You can't drink. You can't dance. You can't do a lot of things to the weak. You can't eat from, those things. I am made all things to all men, that I might by all means save some. He says, save some. He has no idea who's going to be saved. We don't know. But you tell him anyway. You let the light shine upon all men. You don't put your light under a bushel. And he says, and this I do for the gospel's sake, that I might be partakers thereof. And this is where Jesus comes in as the winebibber. For John came neither eating nor drinking. This is John the Baptist now. John came neither eating nor drinking, and they say he has a devil. He's eating and drinking. He's not eating. He's not drinking. He doesn't drink wine. He's not eating. He's eating locusts and honey in the wilderness, and they call him a devil. Now, the Son of Man comes eating and drinking. He does both. He comes eating and drinking, and they say, behold, the man gluttonous and the wine bibber, bibber, a friend of publicans and sinners, but wisdom is justified of her children. So what's going on there? Jesus is eating and drinking with them because he wants to have a chance. If you walk into a bar and they're sitting around the bar and there's tables and stuff, and you sit down at one of the tables and you start talking and you have a drink with them, and you socialize with them, what are you going to be doing? You're going to be hearing their jokes. This is where the jokes come in. You're going to be hearing their jokes, their laughter, their way of being merry, or having mirth in the Old English. There is really nothing wrong with that. And that is a good way to meet them. And that's where he says wisdom is justified of her children. Now, what does that mean, wisdom is justified? It means that being the wine bibber, sitting with them and talking to them and giving them the ability to see the light of the good news, the salvation of God, the transformation from being condemned to die to being promised to live by the Lord our God, who created everything, including life, including the second life, the born-again life, the forever life, for man, the bride. All of the people that believe him are called the bride. He's married to them. He's one with them. He loves them. He's the Messiah. And this is where I'm going to end this. I think it's a good ending.